Let's start by just closing our eyes for a second. Picture this. You're standing right on the dark, humid banks of the Cape Fear River down in North Carolina. The whole world has just gone quiet. You know that very specific kind of quiet that only water seems to know how to make? Yeah, that. You can actually feel the heavy, salt-breathed air settling all around you, and it kind of carries this undeniable weight of the year 1792. So let's just gently ease into this. We're going to explore a place where the veil between the living and the ghosts of a little town called Smithville is remarkably translucent. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're basically taking a midnight river walk right through Southport's forgotten history. Think of this as a peaceful, almost meditative journey through the layered, moonlit past of a town that's kind of caught between two totally different identities. So, I invite you to just settle in, maybe take a really slow, deep breath, and let these historical tides wash over you. There's this very specific brand of melancholy and peace, really, just waiting for us on these riverbanks.
Now, the river mouth is incredibly wide here, right where it opens up into the endless expanse of the Atlantic. Just imagine the scent of the salt marsh filling up your lungs. It's that deep, green smell of low tide, of the earth literally breathing out its old stories as the water slowly pulls back. Out in the darkness, the gentle chop of the brackish water catches the sweep of a lighthouse beam, sparkling just for a second in the blackness, honestly like scattered coins tossed away with complete casual abundance.
What's really fascinating here is this profound kind of identity crisis at the very heart of this quiet town. For nearly a century, it was known as Smithville, named after a Revolutionary War general. It was this rugged, tough place defined by bar pilots who were the only guys actually skilled enough to navigate the treacherous, shifting shoals out there, and soldiers standing guard along the coast. But then, in 1887, seeking the whole progress of railroads, town leaders made a rather practical commercial calculation. They rebranded the town to Southport, hoping to become the Grand Port of the South. Now, the funny thing is, the railroads never quite arrived like they planned, and while the new name stuck on all the maps, the stubborn grace of the old river families kept the real spirit of Smithville totally alive in their memories, and, in those quiet front porch conversations. Let's step back in time for a minute to a night a lot like the one we're imagining right now. It's 1775, in those super quiet, early morning hours right before dawn. The inevitable tide of the American Revolution is closing in, and the royal governor of North Carolina, Josiah Martin, is literally forced to flee for his life. In sheer desperation, the guy runs through the damp darkness in his night clothes. He seeks refuge first at the brick and earth walls of Fort Johnston before finally escaping out to a British ship anchored in this very river. He eventually sailed across the ocean, actually never to return. You see, this whole town is built upon these compressed layers of history. Everywhere around us are the guardians of the Cape Fear. They're like physical scars of survival that somehow still stand resolute today. You've got Fort Johnston, which was the very first British fort in North Carolina, established in 1745. It was actually burned by patriots and rebuilt through multiple wars. There's the old Smithville Burying Ground from 1792, which is basically a library of the lives of those pilots and soldiers. Then there's the old Brunswick County Jail, a really cold two-cell structure built in 1824. And of course, the old Baldy Lighthouse from 1817, acting as a North Star for generations. Whenever tourists take a casual modern summer stroll down these streets, they are quite literally walking directly over centuries of stacked, heavy memory. Let's think about that old Brunswick County Jail for a second. Imagine just placing your hand right against that cold, thick brick. It was this incredibly rigid, heavy structure entirely built to contain human lives. But to me, the truly haunting part is that the prisoners held inside those two tiny cells were close enough to actually hear the faint whisper of the river outside. They could hear the sound of water moving endlessly toward freedom, just completely indifferent to the rigid human laws and those thick walls holding them captive. And then, just a really short walk away, in the darkness, lies the old Smithville Burying Ground. This spot is effectively the town's library of lives. The founding families, the victims of yellow fever, the sailors who came in from the sea and just never left, the salt air and the incredibly slow passage of time have weathered these stones so deeply that many of the names have been completely erased. It's this very quiet, very humbling reminder of how time slowly reclaims identity, returning people to the earth without a marker, leaving behind only a faint, silent echo of the folks who actually built this place. But history here isn't just shaped by the slow creep of time. It's shaped by sheer force. Just when humanity started to feel like, hey, we've finally conquered nature, this catastrophic interruption arrived. On October 15th, 1954, under a full moon and a high tide, Hurricane Hazel struck. The wind was absolutely howling at over 150 miles per hour, but honestly, the wind was just the beginning. It was this massive wall of water that truly rewrote the map. The tide rose an astonishing 18 feet above mean low water. Just let that number sink in for a second. 18 feet. That's easily enough to swallow entire buildings whole. It was essentially a perfect storm that absolutely decimated Southport's historic waterfront in a single devastating sweep. It permanently altered the landscape and violently birthed the yacht basin that we actually see there today. And the sheer scale of that erasure? It is honestly hard to fully wrap your head around. Over in nearby Long Beach, out of 357 houses that stood totally proud and strong right before the storm hit, only 5 miraculously remained standing after Hazel finally passed. Just 5. It was a terribly stark, unavoidable lesson in the sheer, unstoppable power of the natural world. Yet, while storms can erase physical things, words somehow manage to preserve them. The writer Robert Ruark grew up on the deep porches of Moore Street. He used to follow his grandfather through the quiet maritime forests, and he captured the very soul of this place in ink, forever. I want to share something he wrote, which honestly feels like a piece of advice passed down from an old friend. He wrote, "The old man used to say that the best part of hunting and fishing was not the killing or the catching, but the thinking about it before and the remembering of it after." Through his literature, that slow, deliberate wisdom of the river pilots and the really deep feeling of Old Smithville was fully safeguarded against the relentless tides of time. And all of this history kind of leads us to a fascinating modern paradox. Today, that exact aesthetic, the deep porches catching the evening breeze, that scattered coin light dancing on the water, has transformed Southport into what you could call a cinematic shore. There have been over 40 film productions here. We're talking Nicholas Sparks' Safe Haven, even Iron Man 3, all using this town as this picturesque backdrop. So now millions of people visit trying to find the fictional towns of their favorite Hollywood blockbusters, completely unaware that they're walking blindly over the profound, very real history of the forts, the storms, and those silent burying grounds right beneath their feet. As our midnight walk starts nearing its end, we look out across the water to the Oak Island Lighthouse. It was built back in 1958, and its striking black and white bands send this incredibly patient, sweeping beam 19 miles out into the darkness. It's like a final, comforting echo of an older way of being. There really is an immense, profound peace in just watching that light turn, knowing that you don't actually have to be the one who stays awake. You can just close your eyes and rest, fully knowing the lighthouse is going to faithfully keep the watch in the dark. Meanwhile, the river right beside us just continues its timeless equation of velocity, distance over time, moving steadily toward the Atlantic. It breathes right along with the moon, part of this vast ancient tidal cycle that has been moving for thousands upon thousands of years before us, and will definitely continue for thousands of years after. To the river itself, human time, our distant wars, our sudden storms, even our changing town names from Smithville to Southport, they're all merely a brief, incredibly quiet interruption in its endless journey. So I want to leave you with this thought as the town sleeps and the river flows on. Nothing lasts forever, right? But maybe, just maybe, that isn't actually something to fear. As you sit there and imagine the heavy salt air and that distant, patient sweep of the lighthouse beam, what peace can you find in knowing just how briefly we actually occupy these porches? Let that feeling of smallness free you, and let the gentle, ancient rhythm of the tide carry you into a really peaceful rest. Thank you so much for taking this quiet journey through history with me.
In a world built on gears and steam, it's time to uncover the truth. Welcome to NC Uncovered.